In Pursuit of Truth, this is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. We're back once again, and we got some new Q posts. If you think you can handle them, if you think you're tough enough, if you think you got what it takes, because nobody escapes this. Fine, he gets away. I wasn't looking. The rest of you, grab your coffee, fist bump your neighbor, and let's get started. Now, where I last left you, purveyors of all things pursuity, we were at 4336, and we're going to skip up to 4346. These all came in yesterday. Most all of these here were talking about coronavirus. In particular, we were talking about nursing homes in New York, nursing homes in Minnesota, various states. And many of these nursing homes are admitting people who had COVID-19 or do have it, which of course is extremely dangerous considering all we know about the elderly and their propensity for catching the Rona. So this seems like a really dangerous proposition, in particular in New York, where Cuomo is forcing people to take these patients here. So Q is kind of equating this to murder. We have this all kind of going on right around the same time that everyone is talking about the situation with George Floyd, which is a terrible situation, sparking a lot of controversy. If you've been following social media yesterday at all, you knew that pretty much everybody was melting down on the interwebs. So that's where we were. Now in 4347 right here, this was a tweet from Joe Biden, and it came on the 26th of October 2019. Now what's curious about this is that Joe Biden seems to have known something, because this was just days after this event 21 that involved Bill Gates, the Gates Foundation, China of course, the World Health Organization, the CDC. All these different organizations seem to be ready for this quote-unquote pandemic, right? Not to mention this was the Wuhan military games on the 18th. So this was just days from all of this hubbub. We see this from Joe Biden. So does he know something? Well, Q says coincidence or foreknowledge. I think most of us can make informed decisions from there. Now in 4346, this was where Q was talking about this executive order regarding social media companies. In particular, we were dealing with Facebook and Twitter. Facebook has kind of tried to sit this one out, although I don't think that's going to work out for very long. But in particular, POTUS was going after Twitter, who had flagged him for misinformation. Now, this is coming in just as of about 5 minutes ago from Sarah Carter. Twitter targets Trump again, flagging tweet after executive order. Twitter flagged and hit a tweet posted by President Donald Trump's early Friday morning after the president signed an executive order challenging the growing political bias in tech companies whose platforms are meant to be neutral. Trump's tweet was in response to the growing unrest and rioting in Minnesota, in response to the horrific death of George Floyd while in police custody. Thursday night, the situation in Minneapolis escalated again when rioters overran a police precinct, forcing police officers who were told not to respond by city officials to evacuate before it was burned to the ground. Trump signed the executive order Thursday aimed at social media giants he says have been operating as biased publishers rather than platforms for free speech. Trump tweeted that those thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen. Just spoke to Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way. Any difficulty and we will assume control, but when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Yikes. When the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you. The National Guard was sent to assist local authorities in containing the rioting. Earlier, the president criticized the city's mayor, who ordered the evacuation of the precinct, saying the very weak radical left mayor Jacob Fry if he didn't bring the city under control. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Floyd situation, as I think most people want to have something to say about this, and we've definitely been talking about it on Twitter if you follow me over there. But this just happened. So here we go again, the president tweeting again and Twitter flagging him him again. And here they are. We have placed a public interest notice on this tweet from real Donald Trump. And this is the tweet that we just read you here. Twitter's reasoning to place a public interest notice on Trump appears to be in retaliation. His tweet did not incite violence or glorify it whatsoever. Some Twitter users suggested Twitter's CEO Jack Dorsey is in all-out war on the platform against the Trump administration. And Trump's tweets aren't the only ones targeted. Numerous congressional officials and conservative pundits have long complained, including this reporter, that Twitter conducts shadow bans of content and targets conservative voices on the platform. Okay, so here's what the order is about here. The order allows the FCC to re-access Section 230, which grants liability protections to media platforms. The order will also allow for a process to file complaints with the FCC if tech companies' content moderation policies are not neutral, or if they have crossed the line into behaving as publishers of content. Okay, so I have to tell you, this was kind of what I was hoping for. I think there were a lot of people wondering if he was going to shut them down, if he was going to move over to another platform. I do think that he will eventually take his viewership over to another platform, and we'll talk about that at some point too real soon. But for now, what I like about this is simply that they can be held liable for their own actions too. Look, I get it. As a generally a libertarian, I appreciate that these companies can say, look, we're a private platform and we can ban whoever we want. But it also needs to be stated right then and there when you make the contract, whether you sign a contract or whether you engage in a contract. Most of us don't read these long contract things, right? But the fact of the matter is that it has to be set into motion right off the bat. What it looks like Twitter and Facebook have done, and other groups like this, have kind of been over the years kind of slowly changing their rules and picking and choosing who gets to abide by them. So that seems to be the issue here. I don't have a problem personally with them being a private platform and us choosing not to use them or using them. But when we have a situation like, I think a great situation example is this guy Jordan Peterson, who recently got deplatformed from Patreon and is trying to start his own platforms. Next thing you know, you find all these companies that are going in between that are also giving people problems. So it's one thing to say this is a private platform, get off. It's another thing to keep content creators from being able to create private platforms because you're in bed with all the different IP hosts or whatever it may be. We need to be able to work with service providers as well if you really want to kick us off your quote-unquote private platform. So there you go. Okay, so those were basically the cliff notes for the last 10 posts. Let's start at 43:48. 46 minutes after the hour of 12, we get a sample to a couple links here. Q says, fear, panic, loss of narrative control. You are the news now. Not me. Here's a Twitter link to New York Times politics. The internet has connected us in ways unimaginable, but the QAnon community, united in the belief that the world is run by a criminal elite, shows the dangers of that power. Listen to Rabbit Hole. So let's check it out. 7, where we go 1. QAnon believers united in a battle against what they see as dark forces of the world reveal where the internet is headed with all your QAnon experts that you're used to listening to every day. No, I'm just kidding. It's Kevin Roos, Andy Mills, Julia Longoria, Sindhu Nansambandan, and edited by Larissa Anderson and Wendy Dorr. People who don't know a dang thing about Q. So this is 30 minutes of these knuckleheads trying to figure out what they're talking about. And they start off talking about this case that they always bring up. This case of this guy, Anthony Comello, who murdered Frankie Boy Cali. He was a gangster. And the word was that he was dating his niece. Now, they do kind of inject that for a second there. They were like, yeah, we were scrambling to try and find a connection to the family. Then they finally kind of slip it in and say, but that never really panned out. Well, that wasn't true. That wasn't necessarily the case. He was dating his niece. I'd say that's a connection. Anyway, so they go to start talking about the court case, which I'm going to play you part of in just a second. And she's going to start describing this guy, Comello. Now, I want you to picture this guy just murdered somebody. You don't normally give them a sharp object, such as a pen, especially considering he was already cuffed. But there he was, with this big letter Q on his hand. And of course, that's exactly what these knuckleheads jump on. Check it out.
He walked into this court hearing. It's the first time any of us are really seeing him in person.
She's describing Comello.
He looks really grizzled. You know, his hair is really unkempt. He's in this thick, striped green and white jumpsuit.
Is it true you're waiving your right for extradition? Yes, sir. All right.
He sits down at the witness stand. He's got his cuffs on.
Yes. All right.
And at a certain point,
Comments
he
regarding.
raises his left hand. And you see, drawn in the middle of his hand with like a ballpoint pen, is this huge Q.
The letter Q.
The letter
No,
Q.
the number Q, you freaking
As
dolt.
in
QAnon. Exactly.
Right. So that's the New York Times right there. Hard hitting, in your face, quote unquote, news. Okay, so they spend a whole bunch of time clowning this guy and trying to conflate it with QAnon. And this guy has nothing to do with QAnon. We've talked about this for a long time. This was old news for us, but New York Times is still catching up on it. The second link is to the Daily Dot. So you already know it's trash. Inside the first church of QAnon, where Jesus helps fight the deep state. Help us fight the deep state, Jesus! We're not conspiracy theorists, we're conspiracy analysts, announced QAnon researcher Kevin Bushy in a YouTube video after discussing a recent Q drop about the mainstream media expending ammo, writing about QAnon's growth, which is all true. Specifically, Bushy tied the drop to the burgeoning popularity of a QAnon church that I've never heard of after my 3 years of covering this prominently. One that holds weekly services on YouTube that blends Q mythology with biblical theology. None of Bushy's analysis of Q is out of the norm for Q researchers, even though I've never used it ever. Bushy is part of that same YouTube-based QAnon church called Omega Kingdom Ministries, and his interpretation was being presented in one of their services. Okay, well, I got to stop right there. I don't know if you guys know about this, but like I said, I've been covering this for 3 years. I don't know that I'm any kind of expert at QAnon, but you know, I've been around the block a few times, and I have never, ever heard of Omega Kingdom Ministries. Knuckleheads.
In the back of your head, you can kind of hear this chant, one of us, one of us.
Dude said one of us, one of us, one of us. Said nobody ever. I've never said that. 3 years, I don't think I've ever said that. Maybe I didn't get my cult handbook from the Omega Industries. That was what? Omega Ministries, that's what it was. Too busy being MAGA to be Omega. Anyway, you get the idea. But what's unnerving about this is that they are really, really going for broke in trying to conflate our group with things like cults and things like the Christchurch shooting, Sandy Hook, things like this. They're really trying to connect us to these dangerous events, including this issue that they've been pumping for the last couple of years in regard to Anthony Comello. So that's what's really unnerving, watching this happen, and that is why people like Ben Collins over there at MSNBC don't get no respect. So you get the idea. Meanwhile, it looks like it's this guy right here pumping all this stuff, this George Soros, right? This is the guy that is injecting all the misinformation. But I will add this. While a lot of what they say, and they say it in a clowning way, is actually true, we are dealing with some severe evil, right? And Q alluded to this just last week. I think it's really important for us, at least right now, to stay focused on things that really, really matter, like Obamagate, FISA-gate, and keep it really, really simple. Don't worry about the other stuff just yet, because that is what's going to lead to that. We'll never get there if we can't get Obamagate and FISA-gate through to the general public. It just won't happen. It's always going to feel like a conspiracy theory, because they're not going to see what motivated it to begin with. So that's just my 2 cents and all that. But that, for at least myself and my channel, is where I'm trying to stay, keep most of my focus on for the most part, because it makes sense. You can explain it, it's demonstrable, and then hopefully that will lead to the bigger and better things, which we really want to get to. But they're going to try and use that against us at this point, and especially with all the hype, sometimes it's good to do a little retreat in order to win the war. Anyway, that's me on my soapbox. 43:49, 4 minutes after the hour 1, we get this knucklehead right here. Destroying America will be the culmination of my life's work. Yeah, well, you have a crappy life, George Soros. Q says nobody escapes this. All right, fine. The dog and the fat cat get by. Other than that, nobody escapes this. Most certainly not this old bat right here. Look at him. He's not scaling any walls anytime soon. He might be scaly. I'm just saying. Anyway, this guy's got his fingerprints all over recent events, right? And I want to talk just a little bit about this. Let's talk about this incident with George Floyd. As we know, I think everybody has seen this video at this point. Everybody in the world, it's all over the planet, and everybody seems to be up in arms about it. And if we were taking this story at face value, it would make sense. Okay, this was obviously, from what we saw at first glance, looked like to be a terrible situation. You have this former officer, Derek Chauvin, with his knee on this guy's head, and he's saying that he can't breathe. It just looks like a terrible, terrible thing. And of course, if that were the case, it really would be such a terrible thing. Losing a life over this seems so excessive. Seemed like police brutality, right? Just in time for the Rona to end. Now it's time to get back to the race stuff. Unfortunately, what we see, like usual, is the unfurling of more and more events, which lead this whole thing to look a little suspect. So upon first glance here, obviously we see what appears to be not typical police behavior, the way he's kneeling on this guy's head and whatever. It looks to be so terrible, and it almost looks like it's purposely terrible. Now, I noticed a few things in these pictures here and talked to you guys about it on Twitter. First thing I see is that this guy's badge is crooked. A crooked badge. Imagine how symbolic is that, right? A crooked badge. Well, from what I understand, that badge should be straight, and it would normally have 2 pins, so it might rip off, but I can't imagine it just turning. Could be, whatever. So at first glance, I didn't see a radio on this guy. It might be a handheld radio or whatever. And then I noticed him with this other police officer, Thual Tao. And this guy has more of a stitched badge, whereas this guy, Chauvin, has a metal badge. Now, I put the question out there on Twitter, and a lot of law enforcement officers responded saying, Patrick, that's a normal thing. It depends on how they're working or whatever. So that's not necessarily nefarious. I just thought it was curious originally. But these guys have their hands in their pockets. There just seems something to be so strange about this. Now, there are a lot of other different theories going around, and I'm just going to try and touch upon the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But the rest of this video shows this guy show up, and they load him onto a gurney and into an ambulance, but it doesn't appear to be EMTs. It looks like the police did it themselves. Well, that alone is very, very suspect, especially if this guy died. Doesn't look like he would have been treated correctly. So if indeed what we are seeing can be taken at face value, the police have done something very, very wrong, and it resulted in the death of this man. But we have more details, don't we? We also find out now from this lady whose name is Maya Santa Maria, and she owned a club known as the El Nuevo Rodeo Club. And evidently, not just Chauvin, but Floyd himself were working overlapping shifts. As a matter of fact, she says in a little interview that she does there that they would have been working right around the same time, maybe just not in the same location in the club. But it would seem to me like there's at least a chance that these men knew each other. Now, if it only stopped there, that would maybe just be an interesting coincidence, right? We all always seem to have these interesting coincidences. Let's also not forget the fact that Chauvin was working for this Santa Maria for 17 years. I know. Now, there are also some pictures that show what appear to be somebody who looks like Chauvin at the Boston bombings, as well as Sandy Hook. So this gets really, really strange. Now, I don't know those to be true, and I most certainly don't want to offer that up to you as 100% true, but it most certainly seems very sketchy. It looks like this guy has a very strange history, and the fact that he knew this guy, I would imagine for quite some time, even if they didn't know each other well enough, you would think that if he was kneeling on the guy's head, he might go, hey, don't I work with you? Now, there were a lot of people asking me about the back of the cop car, which on the license plate, it just simply said police, and they thought that was a little suspect. I'm not so sure that's the case. I've seen a lot of sheriff's cars say the very same thing, so it wouldn't surprise me that the police would be on a lot of the police cars as well. I don't think that's really curious, but there's a lot of curious things involved here. Zach Voorhees posted this. I'm not going to play the video, just going to show you a screenshot here, but these are evidently the neighbors of Chauvin, who said that for the longest time they didn't even know he was a police officer. So it seems like there's some knuckleheadedry going on here, and maybe we have some fake cops. And speaking of fake cops, we also have this here too. The cop who started the vandalizing was outed by people who know him. His name was Jacob Peterson of the St. Paul Police Department. Okay, so it's hard again to verify that for sure. It sure does look compelling, but it's hard to know. He's wearing that mask, but we can tell that this definitely looks like some sort of clown operation, and where there's clown operations, we're eventually going to get some Soros funding going on, right? So now we've had some looting and fires at places like the local Target, the local AutoZone, which incidentally are both businesses that are very liberal, and as far as I remember, big time supporters of Black Lives Matter. And when I think of Black Lives Matter, I think of guys like Weatherman Underground co-founder Bill Ayers, whom I've done 2 videos on, and I'd like to think drove off Twitter. But this gets really, really suspect. And now the family appears to be calling for an autopsy, and they want Dr. Michael Baden, which gets even stranger. Now, if you've not seen this video, if I may say so myself, it's actually one of my favorite videos that I've done, A Tale of Three Houses, and this was from August of 2019. I'll link it down below for you if you're on YouTube. Otherwise, you can search A Tale of Three, the number 3, not the letter 3, houses. And this goes into Michael Baden and the really curious story of Dorothy Kilgallen. There's a lot of good Hollywood stories in this video, so check it out if you have not already. But Dr. Michael Baden was the one who came up with the magic bullet theory, right? And he has investigated a lot of different bodies, and he's got a suspect history of his own. So this story just gets weirder and weirder. I have even heard some people just recently, recently, like 20 minutes ago, sending me messages saying that this guy Floyd is mentioned in some of the WikiLeaks emails. Now, I want to point out that's just being told to me right now, so I don't know that to be true. So please do not turn around and pass that around as if it were true unless you actually have the emails itself. We definitely should verify that. But it seems like tons and tons of stories are coming in regard to this George Floyd case, and I can't help but think we are just basically provoking a race war. So protesters burning down the house, they're burning down local buildings, burning down the AutoZone, burning and looting the Target, and of course the fire department just sort of stands by, the police stands down. It all seems so suspect, and now it looks like even fake news has gotten turned on themselves. Check it out.
Over the last hour, protesters have gathered in Midtown Atlanta carrying signs asking for justice in the death of George Floyd, also for Ahmaud Arbery. There are many hundred protesters that started at the state capitol, then made their way to the CNN Center into Centennial Olympic Park. 11 Alive reporter Hope Ford has been with the protesters. She said they have been chanting, "Say his name," and chanting George Floyd's name. They've been asking for justice, calling for unity, and she said that the overwhelming feeling from this group gathered there at the park is a unifying message, but a demand of change. We have a lot more on 11alive.com, and we will continue following this as well. Although right now we see actually some pushing in the crowd. Up till now, Hope said it had been peaceful, but we see there from our chopper there's some pushing in the crowd, and we will get more from Hope on that in just a couple of minutes.
Okay, well, don't worry. Hope was able to update them a few minutes later, but this is really turning ugly. And as you can see, it looks like the coronavirus fears have dropped all in one day, right? Doesn't look like anybody's social distancing. I don't see anybody standing 6 feet apart. What if everybody catches the Rona? How come the media is not afraid of them catching the Rona? Looks like they got a little bit more interested in the race baiting again. I think you see what's up. And I think this is going to be a big scale, and I hate to say it, but I can't help but think that this is going to be a lot more of this. But whatever this was, it does not look like true patriots here. It looks like a lot of the, if you go on the CNN threads, if you go on the NBC threads, you're going to see a lot of people trying to blame this on Trump supporters. But this doesn't look to be the case. Looks to be like it could be very much this kind of Antifa funding thing, this George Soros, Bill Ayers funded knuckleheadedry like usual. And now we see this from President Erdogan. I believe that the perpetrators of this inhumane act shall receive the punishment they deserve. We will be monitoring the issue. I remember with respect George Floyd and extend my condolences to his family and loved ones. Okay, well, all of a sudden, President Erdogan is interested in American civil liberties. How about that? Well, I suppose if he really were that interested in protecting civil liberties, maybe he could donate some coin, right? I don't know, maybe through George Soros, right? Get down there to Black Lives Matter, get down there to the SDS, or the Fight or Resist Fascism, which is now Bill Ayers' outfit. This is getting really, really strange. So Erdogan saying that they will be monitoring the issue, which is very suspect. Sounds to me like he's calling out for some cells to activate. We saw some similar eerie letters from Eric Holder and Barack Obama. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is 2020. The news is just coming faster than we can even really take it in. But it sure looks like people are making some really mysterious calls out to the public to get really rowdy. And of course, I don't want to say this for certain as of now, but it most certainly looks really suspect considering the type of crowd that is going after CNN. Normally Patriots kind of have a look. We wear our hats. I don't see any MAGA hats there. I don't see any USA flags. I don't see anything like that. And generally when true Patriots protest, they don't cause themselves a scene. What I see here is a scene. What it looks to me to be some sort of Antifa related scene. And given the fact that George Soros is speaking out, Erdogan speaking out, Eric Holder is speaking out, Adam Schiff is speaking out, Gerald Nadler is speaking out, Barack Obama is speaking out, I would think that I'm probably not that far off. And in post 4350, we see why from the DNI. See what I did there? 21 minutes after the hour of 3, we get a Twitter status to the office of the DNI. DNI Ratcliffe issues statement on declassification of transcripts, and here it is. As I stated throughout the confirmation process, transparency is vital to allowing the American people to have confidence in the intelligence community. As the Director of National Intelligence, it is my obligation to review declassification requests with the overarching priority of protecting sources and methods while also providing transparency whenever possible. Accordingly, today the Office of the Director of National Intelligence declassified transcripts concerning Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. John Ratcliffe, Director of National Intelligence. Outstanding. And that is exactly what we see in post 4351. 1 minute after the hour of 4, Q says worth following declass designations. And the Twitter status takes us to Catherine Herridge. And the link actually takes you to her page alone, not one particular tweet. But as you can see, she's already gotten into some of these documents. Hashtag Flynn side-by-side 2017 WAPO report on Flynn Kislyak from the 29th, 2016 call, and newly declassified transcripts of same call from acting DNI Richard Grinnell and DNI Ratcliffe sent to Chuck Grassley and Senator Ron, not Don Johnson. Make it reciprocal. Don't go any further than you have to. That would be Flynn right there. Kislyak responds, I understand what you're saying, but you might appreciate the sentiments that are raging now in Moscow. Okay, well, it doesn't sound really suspicious to me. Flynn, call Ambassador Kislyak, 4 pages declassified, obtained by CBS News. Kislyak says, I have a small message to pass to you from Moscow. And probably you have heard about the decision taken by Moscow about action and counteraction. And then Flynn down here says, we are not going to agree on everything. You know that, but I think that we have a lot of things in common, a lot. And we have to figure out how to achieve those things, and be smart about it. So as you know, General Flynn at the time was incoming national security advisor. And from what I can see, I'm on about page 9 because I got it this morning myself. I haven't really found anything in particular that would lead any kind of intelligence agency to think that there was something suspect. It looked like they were waiting for the transition to happen. They were waiting for President Trump to take over, and then they were going to start handling some business. But there was this right here, this little excerpt. Before General Flynn's voice message turns on, there is an open line, barely audible chat. Someone asked Cherchev, which agency are we talking about? Cherchev asked to confirm if he understands the question and responds in the same time. Which agency hackers did the hacking? Believe me, Americans did hack this all. After General Flynn's pre-recorded message ends, Cherchev leaves his message. Hello, General Flynn. My name is Dmitry. I am chief of the Russian ambassador's staff. The Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, would like to have a word with you at your convenience. Okay, so right there looks to be the moment where they want to go ahead and set up a meeting. Can you kindly call us back? Our office number is our ambassador's cell phone number, so on and so forth. Okay, so there you have it. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more details coming out in the following days, but this is just another notch in General Flynn's belt and another reason to assume that these were a bunch of dirty cops just going after him for revenge. Now keep in mind that a lot of this unmasking went on before he even got to the call with Kislyak, and he knew about it, which is why they went after him. After that, of course, it was Mike Rogers. They went after him. Anybody who knew about the spying and unmasking, they wanted to get rid of, and the FISA was the cover-up to make it look like it was all legit. So pretty crazy times. Q says worth following D-class designations. Now, Q has been posting a lot of Catherine Herridge as of late, and that really doesn't surprise me, and this is why. Although we mostly know CBS quote-unquote news to be a fake news organization, we also know that a lot of the general population does not see it that way. And if something like this broke out of Fox, there would be a lot of people saying, well, that's just a bunch of Fox conspiratorial crap. But Catherine Herridge is pretty well respected all the way around. She does some pretty good journalism. And so I think if she starts busting out some of these documents, it starts to seep into a different format where people start seeing this on CNN now. Now they're seeing it on MSNBC, ABC, CBS. Now it's on their preferred nomenclature. And although that shouldn't mean anything, it does. And people will start saying, well, shoot, General Flynn got railroaded? Well, where does that lead us next? Wait a minute, you mean Obama knew about this? You see how this works. And so that is my guess. That is what I'm assuming Q is talking about, worth following Catherine Herridge. Maybe she'll be the one to drop the next set of bombs. Not exactly sure, but it seems to have played out that way so far, at least over the last few weeks. But either way, this is likely the cause for the panic all over the place, whether it be in Minneapolis or now in Atlanta. So that being said, stay safe, ladies and gentlemen, because I have a feeling we are going to go through a very bumpy ride over the next few weeks. Those are your Q posts. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. All my alternate links are down below. If you'd like to send me some information, my email is down below. And if you'd like to support the channel, my Patreon is also linked down below. It's all down below in the video description. Thanks for watching. This is Sir Patrick Mack. Until next time, stay funky.